Hey there! It is I, the man behind the trailer. Expectations, right? Well, so there's a lot to talk about. Well, my name is Courage. Nice to meet everyone. My name is also Red-Tailed Hawk, watching closely, or Red-Tail for short. Traditional introductions. Right. So, Betu washte, matako yapin na motako lapi. Hitaka machiyapi yolo, nahalako chashe chashka umpegi wa awayang machiyapi yolo. Oglala nas taromara ikche wa chasha, we hakeke amataha yolo. And of course, I'll follow it up with Guraba. Nihe rewale kuhu natigara. Taromara, Ramamuri, Matataraba. Those are the two languages of the two peoples that make up my family, Taromara and Lakota. I'm the guy who wrote and edited and voiced the trailer. All of you guys have seen 6,500 views now. That's incredible. The fact that the message is getting out there, and the fact that, you know, all the work that we've done with INR so far, the fact that we're a part of something that could really change the course of history for Indigenous peoples and change the course of history for mankind, really. Once we as Indigenous peoples learn to come together and, you know, realize our true power to actually change the narrative, change people's perspective on how they're connected or not to their home, and learning simple things like respect and balance. You know, in this sick world filled with selfishness and disconnection, I feel like the world needs us more than ever. Which is why I'm part of INR, and it's a huge part of, you know, what we're about. But as I also realized, it's a part, there's much more to it than that. That has to do with really, I guess, where I come from in my journey. As you guys get to know me, you realize that I can be a very flighty and eccentric, cartoony, high energy person, and that's just really who I am. And I guess that's really what it's all about, is kind of who you are and embodying that, tapping into the power that lies in that truth. And for me, I've always been someone who's been a very mixed, eccentric individual. I come from a myriad of backgrounds. I identify as many different things, even within my indigenous identity, you know, being from a family that's made of two different nations. But also, it goes further than that. Just a little story about my family. My grandpa, he grew up and was born in the 1800s, actually. My family lives really long lives. I have a lot of life to look forward to. In what is now Chihuahua, Mexico. And then in the early 1900s, he moved his family to what is now Nebraska, which is where I'm from. I now live in Los Angeles. And, but my family, though, almost my whole family belonged to a single church, the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. And, you know, a lot of my family, we were clergy, and a lot of us very devout followers of, you know, the Christian religion. And, you know, as soon as you were born, you started hearing about Bible verses and Jesus right away, so there was a lot of that. But on top of that, there was also a lot of nationalistic assimilationism. Like if you identified as anything other than, you know, just as American as the next white guy, you know, military-loving, kind of patriotic, America is number one kind of crap, then that's bad. If you identified as anything that was ethnic, that was brown in any kind of way, that was dirty, it was inherently, you know, dangerous, you shouldn't be doing that, you know, assimilate. There was a lot of that in my upbringing. But then in my adulthood, I turned against all of that. I always felt indigenous, even though I never understood exactly what it was, what it meant, this thing I never experienced. It didn't keep me from majoring in Native and Mexican cultural studies in college. But I also felt, especially from my southern roots, that it was pretty much a dead heritage, that there was no one left that really remembered or practiced the old ways. And I always kind of quietly wished to myself that I could bring it all back. But then I moved to Los Angeles, and I was really surprised to find just so many people that absolutely remembered the old ways of the Southern traditions. And I got myself involved as much as I could in the indigenous community, wanting to do great things for it. But then I experienced something I feel like a lot of us could relate to, which is what I guess is, alienation from your own community, this imposter syndrome, that no matter how hard you tried to learn your people's ways, the language and just the traditions and everything, you always will be on the outside. You'll be somewhat outside the circle. You'll always be the other. You'll never get to be them. Meeting all these people that knew their songs and their traditions and their dances and their languages, and they're always you feel like they always side-eye you, or they're always kind of measuring you up, like, how indigenous are you, kind of thing. It's an exhausting game. It's an awful feeling. You always feel like you're, put under the spotlight, kind of thing. And it's very intimidating. And it's just a horrible thing for anyone to go through who wants to come back into the circle. And then even when I moved past that, then I experienced a side of our community that's even worse than that, which is kind of how cutthroat and competitive, even territorial, our community can be. Where as soon as you start getting attention, you start drawing the attention of people who will see you as a threat, as competition. Someone who they feel, they need to tear down, and so that they can bring themselves up. People who have taught themselves that they need to go out there and they need to set a standard for what it means to be indigenous. And they need to police everyone else, and they need to be the one, that gets the credit for doing the work out there and stuff. And it just becomes like this horribly toxic environment. And I experienced that myself personally in a big way years ago, and it was one of the most difficult things in my life. But now, though, I feel like I've reached a point to where I now know who I am. And I now not only know who I am, but I know that the very things that I went through are the things that are core to what INR is about, but also central to what we all need to realize together, to truly realize who we are as a intercontinental community, which is that the indigenous peoples of the North, Central, and the South Americas, we're all one people made of many nations. And only when we realize our power, when we're together, supporting each other, being there for one another, no matter where we're coming from, who we are, how mixed we are, you are still indigenous, and you can be a part of something that can heal and transform our communities, that can bring us together for the first time, and we can embody what we represent, that can be especially healing for this sick colonial world that we're a part of, the larger community that's lost its way, that's destroying itself. Literally us realizing that just because you're on one side of the border or another, or that your roots are, doesn't mean that you're any less or more indigenous. To me, there's so much power in that. And that is really what INR is all about. And so really, I'll leave you with this, is, INR is definitely not just about some trailer that I made for you to see and share and comment and be like, hey, yeah, that's great, I agree, I'm so inspired. It's really about, honestly, inspiring and motivating indigenous people into action. Having people like you ask yourself, what does it mean to me to decolonize? And furthermore, what does that look like for me? What kind of work, what calls to me the most as far as the work that I want to do to decolonize my communities, my tribal governments, my family, myself, my society, the world? What is that work that calls to me? What kind of role could I play in this larger shift that's happening across continents, where we're all waking up and realizing that the world needs us now more than ever? We need ourselves now more than ever. So I'll leave you with that, because we're going to be doing a lot of things on our end to help facilitate that, but we need everyone on board here. We need all hands on deck to really make this future happen for future generations, for the survival of our future generations, for the survival of the planet, for mankind, helping save itself from itself. I feel indigenous peoples are absolutely at the center of the work it's going to take to accomplish that. So I'll leave you with that. It's great meeting everyone. I'll try to do at least one of these a week. But until then, Mitako Yepi Oyasin to all my relations. Tokshake.